This is Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. Future Sense Now is brought to you by the Futures Forum. Stay tuned for a journey to the future with host Dr. Claire Nelson.
Greetings and welcome to Future Sense Now, an online e-magazine of the Futures Forum. It is May 2018 and this month we're celebrating World Telecommunications and Information Society Day with an exploration into the futures of artificial intelligence. The theme for this year is enabling the positive use of artificial intelligence for all, and it focuses on the potential for AI to accelerate the UN SDGs. Now, we all know there's been significant progress in AI technology. We're seeing smartphones, and we know that this is due to big data, machine learning, computing power, storage capacity, and a host of other technology improvements. And supposedly, we're hoping that this will help people improve better lives by improving healthcare, education, finance, agriculture, and a whole host of other services. So the question for this year's ITU theme is, can this really help us accelerate progress around the world? In this segment, I will speak to SIMI ADEJUMO, who is from Nigeria. He is going to help us think through what's happening in the African continent and how AI and his work in AI may help improvement. Let me say a little more about him. He is the founder of or co-founder of Aajoh, a health tech enterprise that has enabled individuals to put their health feelings, quote unquote, via text, audio, and photographs to obtain medical options using AI algorithms. In other words, it's the beginning of a nascent health tech industry, home-based, homebred in Nigeria. He has a chemical engineering degree, bachelor's from a university in Osun State in Nigeria back in 2014. So he's a young Turk. Anyway, without further ado, let me introduce our guest, SIMI ADEJUMO. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have a young person who is on the frontier of change making in the mother continent, Africa, Nigeria to be particular, and Osun State. Where are you now, Lagos or Osun State?
Lagos at the moment.
Yeah, Lagos at the moment. Well, thank you for taking time to speak to me. Now, you are so young, you're probably not, you're more familiar with, Black Panther and these movies of current days. But I came into this whole science and technology world from, Star Trek and iRobot. And in those days, now that I'm seeing things like Alexa and Siri, and I'm hearing about AI flying planes and trading money and currency, I have this sort of a unease. Is AI going to be a tool for human acceleration and improvement, or is AI going to be something that will eventually make humans really defunct? From your point of view, which is real and which is not?
So, well, you say, I'm new and I'm young and I'm the Black Panther age. But in terms of what is not real, I would say the Terminator wouldn't be real as it applies to AI. I would say there would be no need for a John Connor. What is real is AI is here to stay. AI is here to improve the welfare of individuals. And in terms of, in sub-Saharan Africa or emerging countries, AI actually would to jump through barriers that would be needed in terms of deploying traditional technology. So I know in developed countries, AI is used for improving the quality, speed, delivery. But here, it's actually used to deliver those basic elements. AI will be needed in delivering healthcare. Like my work in healthcare is actually due to the shortage of qualified medical doctors. So AI bridges that gap by creating digital doctors that individuals can actually relate with. There are actually more smartphones in Africa right now than ever before. There are over 146 million telephone lines in Nigeria at the moment out of 180 million people. So that gives the ability to provide 146 million medical doctors.
Okay, so stop. So you're saying there are 146 million cell phones.
Yes, cell phone lines.
Yeah, so let's say half of those are smart, right?
Correct.
And then you have a total of 100 and what, 80 something million people.
That's accurate.
Right. Okay. Now, so you are saying then, as the UN agenda says, that if we're talking about combating hunger, poverty, and reducing inequalities, your work is to ensure that AI is used to reduce inequalities around access to quality healthcare. That's the space you are working in.
That's accurate. AI would provide access to the basic services that individuals require. If you deploy traditional technologies, in terms of scale, it will not be able to scale because of the lack of infrastructure.
Right now, okay. So now let's talk a little bit about your startup, and it's now actually probably in phase B. It's not like totally startup. You've been testing it, working on it. What has been the uptake? How have people responded to this idea of putting their information and their quote unquote healthcare concerns onto smartphone?
So it's been a bit of mixed concerns, to be honest. Some people will say, I'm not too sure I want a computer to actually diagnose me. And then I'm like, okay, well, that is, one-sided, but, you go to a medical doctor and then you take your blood pressure. He's using a computer to do that. It's just that, it's a different interface. You're not talking to your phone. There is also this human feel to it. So for us, we thought that, we needed to make it a bit more personalized and build more trust into that system. And that has been a major barrier into getting the solution on board. However, we tested with about 40 earlier. Out of that, we got positive reviews from some, a bit were negative. In terms of the accuracy of our algorithm, it's about 76%. So give or take in Nigeria, we see that 7 in 10 illnesses are about malaria. So we can accurately cater to malaria, typhoid, some basic primary healthcare needs, but some other ones cannot be accurately catered for by the algorithm at the moment.
So that's a question. I forget. So have you focused on any let's say rural areas where there's even more or less even access, even not say rural, not like deep rural, but let's say peri-urban areas where the people will be more familiar or comfortable with this. They're already using it to pay bills, for example. Have you tested this model like in those kind of areas where you may have people who are using it already to pay bills, and so this is just an add-on to something they're really comfortable doing?
So we wouldn't say we tested in the rural areas. We tested in urban areas, actually. And that was due to education factors. Nigeria is kind of a diverse nation with several languages. The solution is actually only in English right now. So it will be really difficult for us to actually deploy that solution in the rural areas without accurately covering the language barrier.
That's actually very fascinating, because one of the challenges even in AI in the US and Europe is this idea of the cultural competence of the AI. I mean, you have to make it intelligent in the party's own language and construct, and so health is no different. In fact, health is even more important to explain what people are feeling. Have you given any thought to then let's say maybe targeting then let's say young people who are more familiar? In other words, they're just coming into their, let's say, need for healthcare in a serious way. Have you targeted around youth health issues, youth concerns? What has been the interest in, say, in the ministries of health in this, in what you're doing?
So it's a good question, actually. So our initial data we got over 32,000 data entries by working with a university healthcare center. So most of the data we use in terms of healthcare, the data has to be localized to your use case. The kind of conditions that a young person is going to face is going to be different from the conditions an older person will face. So whenever the data we used had the set of data I had was largely based on a young population. So we actually deployed this solution to a university population whereby the age was within 27 to 32. And then we also saw age differences between 16 25. So we had that whole subset of data, and that was what we used to generate the algorithm at that moment.
No, no. So does the regulatory framework in Nigeria, because again, I think that this idea, this construct of working with universities, right? So let's say you tested in one university, it's very easy to have another university on board. It's a group of people who are young, but then of course they're going to have privacy issues and privacy concerns. Do you find that the regulatory and policy and legal framework in Nigeria is kind of moving to consider these issues and consider this direction in terms of the provision of healthcare?
So, I mean, it's also a good question. So in Nigeria, the law right now is, the hospital owns the data of the patient. However, what we did was we went through another approach in acquiring data. So if we're testing in OAU, we use OAU's data to test with students. However, we also got data from the students themselves. So we walked to them while they were waiting to see a medical doctor and said, oh, you could try out this solution. It could help you. It's a triage solution that could actually diagnose what you have. And then they input their data. At that moment, that data is their own. And since they've signed up to the solution, it's their own data. So there are no privacy concerns that would apply in that situation.
So let me ask you a question. This university has how many students?
So at the moment, they have about 24,000 students.
And you got 2,000 students to participate?
24,000, they have 24,000 students. We got about 40 students to participate, 40.
Only 40 you got to participate?
Yes.
Why you couldn't get more students to participate?
So, I mean, we looked at the students who were actually going to receive healthcare. It was for a short period of time. So it's like you're going to a health center. So at that moment, you understand, you can accurately relay the feelings you're feeling at that moment. Because if we just selected random people on the streets, we don't even know if they're feeling ill or not feeling ill. So it brings in a large error set into the data system.
Do you have any, does the app have any, let's say, tie into like, say, preventative healthcare metrics? I mean, where do you see this going as you're going forward?
So the whole goal was, in terms of preventive medical care, basically, as you keep on using the solution learns more about you, and that's the whole concept of AI. And then it will be able to predict if and when you would fall ill. So it would also have an element of eating habits, your lifestyle habits, and that way, the whole goal was, in terms of chronic illnesses, to actually eradicate chronic illnesses by promoting healthy lifestyle among individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So with the healthcare data they have, with their lifestyle data, eating habits, exercises, then you could find a way and create an algorithm and say, oh, you know what, at this moment, this is good, this is not good. And then based on your medical history, your family history, then you'll be able to achieve preventive healthcare to an extent. So
let's step back from the in-depth look at health and step back a little bit and look at the AI community itself at large. Mm-hmm. So this university, it has an engineering department. You studied chemical engineering. How did you kind of drift into AI from chemical engineering?
Good question. So in chemical and in engineering, basically, is necessary for all students. So in my second year, I studied computing, and then from there, I picked up further interest in it. And then moving further, I participated in the whole prize competition, where I actually submitted this solution, and then that was how I now got in depth into AI. And then before then, I actually worked with a wedding startup, which was trying to use artificial intelligence to actually predict choices of brides. So it's going to use the social media profiles of individuals or brides to say, oh, you know what, we're going to actually love to have a destination wedding. We're not going to love to have so many people. We want to have a garden wedding. Basically similar to, what Cambridge Analytica did. but just for brides.
Okay, so how is the AI community in Lagos? What is happening? Tell me, give me a sense of the sort of vibrancy, vitality, and volatility of the space of people who are working in this space.
Right. So in Lagos, I think AI is kicking up in Nigeria. It's really coming up real good. In terms of the financial space, it's really vibrant and active. A lot of banks have actively started deploying bots to enable individuals to actually carry out banking activities. There's also this incredible startup, AI, which allows you to carry out all your financial administration by a bot. So it's also backed by Y Combinator. So it's a pretty fascinating one, and I'm really rooting for them.
So do you think that a company like yours, Aajoh, will be able to identify local financing to take it to the next level, the kind of partnerships you may have to have with universities or the phone systems or whatever to really make it more accessible? What is your view of how it could go forward?
In terms of going forward, I wouldn't really bank on local financing. I think healthcare is really difficult. So healthcare, what you really need to do in healthcare is just to determine the next step and the next step and make sure you have enough money to go to the next step. And then from that next step, move to the next step. Because due to regulation and then also financing is really new in this part of the world. So a lot of investors wouldn't want to put their money into a heavily regulated sector at this moment. So there has to be enough proof that, this is not just a concept, but this is actually a viable business. Yeah. So I wouldn't bank on financing from local investors right now, but probably foreign investors or just trying to bootstrap to get the solution working.
Do you think that the Ministry of Health in Nigeria will be willing to partner with you? What is the openness to the ministries of health in looking at AI as a solution for their goals of providing healthcare for all in Nigeria?
I haven't spoken to the Ministry of Health yet. That's the federal ministry. I think they will be more than willing to. It's just finding an angle that is mutually beneficial to all. I have worked with a state ministry of health for a solution like this, but it's a solution and an advanced electronic medical record system that had a bit of analytics and AI added to it with the Ocean State government. And so that way they were able to get data on their patients. Mm-hmm. So from that experience, I believe that yes, the Ministry of Health will be more than willing to partner.
Okay, so tell me, you're fairly young, and there's going to be so many changes. In the next 10 years, we're going to see so many changes in terms of artificial generalized intelligence, where the AI is actually learning to learn. We're going to see virtual reality and augmented reality. How do you see some of these technologies kind of interfacing with what you're doing to really provide, 5-10 years out, something that's really going to have hundreds and thousands of, let's say you're going to stick with a population, for example, or people, or making a shift to like language specific AI. Where do you see this going?
Right. So I think for me, I think all exponential technologies have to come in together for us to have tangible change. So a simple example will be, let's say we're doing AI for education, and the AI is going to create a personal tutor for an individual. Sometimes maybe the individual will want to just interface with somebody physical. Maybe then you create a model and then you could put a bit of augmented reality into it. You want to be able to see a bit of, let's say, a trail or something to understand that, okay, yes, this person is really being taught well, then, okay, yes, you could add a bit of blockchain into it. So for all these exponential technologies to come and grow at scale and impact human life, there needs to be an interface between the three major ones will be AI and augmented reality. So AI and augmented reality interfacing will be really huge in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a headline, because we're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. 2030, that's only 12 years from now. You will still be a young man with a young Exactly. So it's something that you should be really thinking about. What will I be doing 12 years from now? You know, will my business be successful? If not this, what this will be the second iteration of my app. Give me a headline story you'd like to see. Your headline, your preferred headline story for 2030.
Let me see. It's going to be something in between education and healthcare. So one will be, personal surgeon, a personal surgeon for individuals whereby you can do a surgery on yourself using AI and VR. That will be incredible.
I don't think in 80 years, surgery on yourself. I don't know about that one. See, what does Aajoh stand for? Does it mean anything? AAJOH. Does it mean anything?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a Yoruba word. That's my tribe. It means care.
Care?
Yeah, it means care.
Ah, okay. So Aajoh is going to be providing advice for personal surgery in 2030. And what else? What's the second thing?
The second one will be, let's say, you could get a personal tutoring, education, AI for education, really. Let's say you could get a whole degree by having a personal tutor right in front. So that's right up from kindergarten up to your university level. You could just be home.
Actually, that's a good thing, because I was wondering, I should have asked you that question. Could AI be used to could Aajoh be used to also help to fill the gap in health education? You have a big challenge with training enough nurses, nursing assistants, client care assistants, etc. Have you any thoughts about doing that as well, or are you going to stick mostly in the healthcare direct to customer space?
So at the moment, it's still going to be healthcare right now. I really love education. I think in terms of the next biggest market, education will be, because technology is prompting a lot of things. So education will be able to retrain people in this new skill. But I think right now, I'll stick to healthcare for now.
Healthcare. Well, fantastic. So are you optimistic, pessimistic, or neutralistic that the client base, the customer base, or the people in Nigeria will be open to adopting AI-enabled healthcare? What is your feeling?
I think I'll be pessimistic. I will be optimistic rather, not a pessimist. Can you imagine that? So I am really optimistic about this space. If one thing the adoption of mobile phones has actually taught me is that, in this market, they would adopt it want to solve their needs. So yes, I'm an optimist.
Well, thank you so much. Well, that's it, folks. We have come to the end of the conversation with SIMI ADEJUMO, who is the founder or co-founder of Aajoh, which is a health tech enterprise based in Lagos, Nigeria, that enables individuals to input their health conditions, their text, audio, and photographs to obtain medical options using AI algorithms. He's also worked as a product manager and co-founder of Beta, which is a web tech startup based in New York and provides personalized wedding options to brides. So he's very much a part of the vanguard of young people trying to get AI community in Lagos, Nigeria, off from its knees to a running start. And we're delighted to have had the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you so much, Simi.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. And I look forward to sharing more of our work with you guys.
Yes. First, folks, thank you for joining us on Future Sense Now, where we explore sage ideas for sustainable futures. We've come to the end of a great conversation, but the story for our future continues being written by all of us. Remember, the future is embedded both in the DNA of the past and the landscape of the present, and we are parents of our shared future. So as we say in Jamaica, walk good and safe journeys.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson, brought to you by the Futures Forum. For more, please visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Thank you for listening. Spread the word. Share the future.